Now to the passing of Jesse Jackson at the age of 84, the civil rights giant, presidential candidate, and man who told millions of Americans, you are somebody.
Jackson died overnight at his home in Chicago, surrounded by his family. We have several reports on his remarkable life and influence. We're going to begin this afternoon with Eyewitness News anchor Sandra Bookman. Sandra.
Liz, Jesse Jackson has been a major player on the world stage for some 5 decades. His moral vision and fiery oratory reflective of what he believed was the promise of America, a promise he was determined to see kept for every American. Keep hope alive was not just a catchphrase. It was his calling.
We ain't the bottom. We're the foundation.
Reverend Jesse Jackson was a towering figure in the civil rights movement. His unwavering commitment to justice, equality, and human rights helped reshape America. A protege of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Jackson marched.
The real title of this video should be, "Why does death always surround the king?" I had to ask AI. I had to ask ChatGPT. I don't know what to call it. Alexa, I don't know what to call it. I had to ask, why does death always surround the king? Ever since the ancient days. That is the question, the real question. That's the real title of this video. Why does death always surround the king? Keep on. Number 64. Like 1964 Civil Rights Bill, Civil Rights Act. Like how Eazy was riding in his 6-4. Why does death always surround the king? The one who wears the crown. Let's see. As they are, let's see what they say. I want to know the relationship between death and kings in the occult. Often centers on the monarch serving as a bridge between the living world and the divine or underworld realms. Historically, this relationship was defined by the sacred king archetype, where the ruler's life and death were intrinsically linked to the fertility, safety, and continuity of the realm, often involving sacrificial rituals. Why does death always surround the king? We'll get it to Jesse Jackson here in a minute. Man, he died at 84. There's a lot of 84s going around. All right.
No other team in the NBA wants him. His time is up. I can't wait to see these shorts. His time is up. No team wants him. He's got one more year. And when he retires, his number would be called to either him, his wife.
Why does it always surround the king? Let's keep it pushing. Reverend Jesse Jackson. Today, Tuesday, February 17th, 2026, is the start of the Chinese New Year. It must be a new moon today. Moon connected to the death, souls out through the moon, right? Somebody says it's the 54th anniversary of the Rainbow Coalition, which is true, but it's the one that was started by the Black Panther Party with Fred Hampton, 1969, 1970. Reverend Jesse Jackson started his in 1984. Now we got Reverend Jesse Jackson down at 84 years old. He started his coalition in 84. Dies in Chicago. Like I said, we got the Chicago Pope, the Pope. Fan of the Bears, right? He's a Leo. I mean, that's his name, Pope Leo, right? So we got Obama responding to Trump's racist tweet, right? Now let's just go to Obama. As you can see, Obama is 64 years old. That's just, I didn't know that. I didn't know he was 64. I'm glad I put that 64 up there. Born on August 4th. That's another 8-4. All right. August is Leo month. The 84, another 84. And yeah, like I said before, the civil rights movement was mostly college students, right? And then you got to take in consideration these people was brand new to TV. You got to put yourself in that time frame when this stuff is going on. These people was brand new to TV. All right, so Jesse Jackson dying at 84. All right, in Chicago. That's where Michael Jordan. That's why I said something about LeBron earlier. I know y'all probably was like, "Why is this still talking about basketball?" But everything's connected, bro. Just gonna lead right to this NBA championship where Game 7 is on the real King James' birthday. This is this coming up championship. But 1984 is when Jordan came to Chicago. That's when he was drafted. It's also when LeBron James was born. That's what I'm saying. He's tied into this too. LeBron James born 1984. There we go. Akron, Ohio. The 84s. Like I said, yeah, Obama. Born August 4th. That's 84. Now, I'm trying to see where I want to go with this. I was gonna say Messy Jesse because man, the real, people who was around back then, they know what was Jesse's name was. They know how we felt about Jesse. I know people gonna be fake now, but shit, your granddaddy wasn't really digging Jesse like that.
Jackson said, he told me, Jesse, take our people onto the mountaintop. And that didn't bother me, even though I know Jesse got nowhere near him. And then Jesse said, I held his head in my hand while he died. And that didn't get to me. And then Jesse said, look at my shirt. And I looked around, sure enough, and Jesse Jackson's shirt was drenched in blood. And I realized the only way Jesse could have gotten that blood was stoop down on that floor with the Revrend Motel and rake that blood off that floor and put that blood on it. And I went crazy. I really tried to kill Jesse. They grabbed us and all that, but that hurt me so bad. The other thing was,
he said he wanted to kill Jesse. All right, this is an old video too. This is just showing you that this, like I said, I want the title of this video be "Why Does Death Surround the King?"
10 years later at a press conference, he slipped because God do baffle your mind sometimes. You look at the field to know what the civil rights movement actually was about. Even as they marched, now they could have stopped in a hotel, but when you think about marching from Memphis to Jackson or Jackson to Memphis, there were no hotels. You stayed in churches, you stayed in people's homes. And that's how we got over, that's how we got through. The struggle was a spiritual struggle. That's the Mason's Temple, where Dr. King made his last address.
When he said that tripped me. I said, the Mason Temple? Hold on, wait a minute. Yeah, I looked it up. Yeah, I say MLK Jr. was always at the Mason Temple. Famously used the Prince Hall Mason Temple as his base of operation, where he maintained. This is just, I guess, coincidence, right? Just coincidences. And then this Martin Luther King got 1,000 streets named after him, Martin Luther King Jr. But like I said, he got his name from another guy, Martin Luther, the Protestant, who went against the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church. Why would I bring up the Catholic Church with all these 84s going around? There's no streets named. These streets are not named after the white Protestant Martin Luther King, but rather the Baptist minister. Why would they name? Why would they not name it after the dude who he got his name from? But he went against the Catholic Church. But they named it after this guy. Maybe because he, or maybe not. The 84s. Obama, like I said, he's August 4th. Jordan coming in Chicago. You know, Obama's connected to Chicago too. All these 84s, right? The 84 is for, not for that. The Jesuits, all right? The Jesuit. But it gets deeper than that. Because if you actually go from the day that Michael, I'm about to say Michael King, but Martin Luther King Jr. died, which was April 4th, 1968, to the day that Jesse Jackson died, 3,019 weeks. That's the 433rd prime number. That break down to the 84th prime number. That's another 84. So that just let me know whatever's going on. This is directly connected to this date right here. And he was working on the poor people's campaign at that time. He wasn't the same Martin Luther King as he was in 64 when he was, you know, on his way out in 68.
Alongside him, eventually becoming one of the top lieutenants in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which challenged the cruel oppression in the Jim Crow South. And he was there in April 1968 when Dr. King was struck down by an assassin's bullet.
And I tried to feel his head, and I asked him, I said, Dr. King, do you hear me? Dr. King, do you hear me? And he didn't say anything.
After a leadership struggle, Jackson split from the SCLC and formed a new organization, People United to Save Humanity, PUSH. A tireless agent for change, he continued to elevate the voices of the voiceless.
Our flag is red, white, and blue, but our nation is rainbow. Red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight.
Jesse Jackson broke boundaries in politics as well, twice running for president, first in 1984 under the banner of a Rainbow Coalition, and again in 1988. For a time, he was the Democratic Party frontrunner before losing the nomination to Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis.
So yeah, he ran in 88, but he also ran in 84, right? Another 84. Yeah, watch when these dudes be pointing, right? But the lady, who mom is missing, and she's still missing, right? It's just, she's an American broadcaster, right, and journalist. She's 54. You know, her mom is, you know what age her mom is, right? She's 84. The Jesuits, even Abraham Lincoln, bruh. The American Civil War of 1861, 1860 would never have been possible without the sinister influence of this is history. Why don't nobody know this history? Why did this NFL star just die at the age of 54? Trey Johnson. No, 54 my favorite. But we on these 84s.
King Jr. and became his successor shortly after his assassination. Through his Rainbow Push coalition, the two-time presidential candidate advocated for the poor and underrepresented. Jesse Jackson was 84 years old.
We will have more weather coverage in
February 17th. I couldn't believe it. That is Michael Jordan's birthday, Chicago, Illinois. As soon as that's the only thing you can think about. It's Jim Brown's birthday, too. I forgot about that. That is Jim Brown's birthday. Rest in peace to Jim Brown, the great Jim Brown. There's Martin Luther King pointing at nothing. Why is he pointing? Why is he just pointing? We go to Divine 9, right? You got Kappas, Alphas. All set up. With the misdirection. Classic. That is classic. Misdirection. Why these people ain't worried about it? Down here. This brother operated out of a Masonic temple. Man, no.
This civil rights movement that everyone today looks at as a great thing, it was not fully endorsed by the older generation. And I think that's...
Hell nah. You gonna send your kids out there to get bit by dogs and water hoses and stuff? Like I said, these was kids.
After watching that history, it should be easy to understand why I say that the television is the biggest weapon ever used against humanity. And we barely have gotten anywhere talking about it. When you really come to understand how deep this all is, and then understand that we all now walk with personal television sets in our hand, it's quite hard to deny that you have been mentally programmed. I mean, that's the whole business of the television and why ads exist in the...
Oh yeah, why am I playing this? Because to me, let me check. To me, the first indigenous Moorish American TV star is Dr. Martin Luther King. That's why I'm pulling up that TV stuff. Because and not to diffuse these two, but I do believe the first international TV star is somebody you would never guess. They're gonna say somebody else though. Naomi Watts, 2000. I don't know what I'm. They don't know what I'm talking about. Well, if I give them a little bit more information. Joanne Miller. Okay. It should have been. Okay. Oh yeah. I ain't even gonna play the game with them. It was supposed to be the first real international TV star is Hitler. He was the one who was on TV like that the most. That's what I'm saying. The first indigenous American TV star is Dr. King.
In the first place. In the last part, when we ended, we were discussing some of the mental changes that the television brought to the world. And after discussing the changes from politics and TV journalism, I didn't want to overwhelm with information when considering the next two ways, being that they are also very huge in the grand scheme of how we are in this world today. So I want to continue this discussion so that you can clearly understand the mental war that has been waged against us all, starting with yourself maybe, or your parents, your grandparents, depending on your age, the baby boomers. The goal is that after you understand this, you can begin to peep the game being played and understand what was actually going on and has gotten even worse today. In this part of the series, we're going to deal with the civil rights agenda and the feminist movement of the 60s. We got a lot to talk about. Let's begin. Okay, so the first thing we must get into is the civil rights era. The civil rights agenda was a major part of the control of this era. It's not a coincidence that the civil rights era began at this time. For decades before the 60s, there was segregation and inequality, hate between both sides. And if you honestly think that what changed all of this was just a natural feeling of love and hope or activism, if you think those things changed this dynamic, you are entirely too naive. And I don't mean that to offend you. It was not love, hope, activism, or even the God of the Bible, Yahuwah, carrying this out.
That's the business deal right there. That's 64. That's why that number's big.
These changes came because the powers that be have had us on a path towards a new way of the world. And in order to bring about that agenda, Satan needed to change the minds of the people to be more aligned with this new way of thinking that he was producing. This change would not have been possible without the television. The television changed the narrative because it was designed to do so. It was all a program. But the program, It was not for the adults. Both of these sides were already set in their ways. I'm speaking of both white and black adults. The program of change was set and intended for the baby boomer generation. These minds were already in control of by a small few. And they
The baby boom. This is 1946 to 1964. It was a baby boom. It was a boom of babies. You telling me it was a boom of babies? So, one thing leads to another. You have people coming home from the war. They had jobs, and they got right to it. They started making babies. But it was, look at the music of the time. The music of the time was set for them to make love to. You got the Deals, the Temptations, the Supremes. It's all R&B and love songs for the most part, dominating the airways, even for the Europeans too. They had their artists, but they was making love, making music too. And now look at the times today. Ain't that much love making music going around. Even the R&B songs be really about breaking up.
They were carefully being guided into following the path that was set for them in order to bring us to where we are today. So we need to understand it. We're going to start with the civil rights agenda. In discussing the civil rights agenda, it's important to know and understand that in the Negro community, it was not the adult Negroes from the silent generation that were generally excited about Michael King and his new movement. I'm not sure if that's common knowledge or not. There was a movie called The Butler. It took me a while to watch the movie because it just sounded boring, but it was actually a decent movie. I think it did a good job with showing the difference between the older generation and the younger generation in the Negro community. Now, one thing I hate about that movie, and all movies like that, is that they completely leave out and ignore the Prince Hall Freemasonry aspect of the main characters, which does not give a clear picture of truth to those watching. And of course they don't, but the Prince Hall Freemasonry is a big reason how these people were able to be around all those secrets. But anyways, the younger generation, which were these baby boomers, they grew up wanting revolution, and they followed men like Michael. Now, I made a video about Michael King and his so-called dream. So if you don't understand my issue with him, please make sure you watch that video. I'm not getting into it fully here, but I think that as I explain, you should be able to make this all out for yourself. Regardless of my feelings about him.
That's what I'm saying. I'm talking about 1964. I ain't talking about 1968, Martin Luther King. That's a whole nother Martin Luther King joint. I'm talking about 64. Because after 64, after he signed that, after they did that business deal, after he signed that, they was done with Martin Luther King. After that, he was really free to do whatever he want. But you gotta it seems like all of them gotta die an occultic death at the end of it. Like if you go to his death day, like this dude that he got his name from. Oh yeah, I forgot about this too. And then it went away. But I'm thinking, George Floyd probably got nothing to do with this. But I went from the day George Floyd died to the day Jesse Jackson died. And it's like 68 months, which 1968 is, that's when King was assassinated. All right. I ain't gonna hold that no longer, man. Did this brother get to say what he had to say?
Which he almost didn't make because the night happened because they thought Martin was behind us. And so Ralph's preacher said to him, they're just spending the last hour on earth. 3 preachers in a room, Abernathy, King, and Kyle. And we spent that people in the courtyard. He stood here and I stood there. Only as I moved away so we could have a clear shot, the shot rang out. Thank you. I turned around and then I stood back on the balcony. Listen. Oh. Wait, listen. Listen. 30 years later, His brother never realized he would slip and stay there.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh hell no. Okay, yeah. Slipped up and said as I moved out the way so I could get a clear shot. All right. Rest in peace, Jesse Jackson, man. Hit the like button, comment, subscribe. About here, peace.